before sunrise on a mild summer morning in June 1995. A 27-year-old television news anchor named Jodi Huisentruit hurriedly left her apartment in Mason City, Iowa, headed for work. But she never arrived, and her disappearance has never been solved. In 2003, two television news reporters created FindJodi.com, a website dedicated to preserving Jodi's memory and keeping her case alive. This is the official Find Jodi podcast. Welcome back to the Find Jodi podcast. I'm Scott Fuller. Today's episode is about another named person of interest in the Jodi Huisentruit disappearance, one who was investigated by Mason City police and later all but eliminated by police. He is another individual who has been looked at in Jodi Huisentruit's case who has been convicted of sex crimes. His name is Thomas Corscadden. In 2004, 9 years after Jodi's abduction, and just before Corscadden was scheduled to be released from prison for a different crime, the Minnesota Attorney General and the county attorney for Mower County, Minnesota, filed a petition to commit Thomas Corscadden to a secure treatment facility following his release from prison. The state, in its petition, noted this extraordinary step was necessary because of Corscadden's known criminal sexual behavior, noting also a decades-long history of substance abuse, as well as sexual voyeurism and exhibitionism. The petition further alleged several crimes against women committed by Corscadden, both in the States and overseas, while he was serving in Vietnam. At the time, in 2004, Mason City Police Department Lieutenant Ron Vanderweerd classified Corscadden as a suspect in the Jodi Huisentruit disappearance 9 years before, noting the investigation at that point had not been able to completely rule him out, while also noting there was no evidence tying Corscadden to Huisentruit's case either. Corscadden landed on Mason City police radar relatively early in the investigation, and MCPD quickly determined that in 1995 he'd been driving a light-colored Ford Econoline van, similar to one reported by an eyewitness parked at Jodi's apartment complex in Mason City in the early morning hours prior to her abduction. Police also told the media that Corscadden had allegedly attempted to acquire tickets to a taping of a television show in Mason City in the spring of 1995. And reportedly became angry when he was unable to access the taping. Upon being questioned by Mason City police, Corscadden acknowledged that there would be evidence of sexual activity in the back of his van, which he accounted for by citing sexual encounters with both men and women in the vehicle, including sex workers Corscadden claimed to have hired in Rochester, Minnesota. He also acknowledged having attended strip clubs while in Mason City. And according to court records, in 1996, a bail agent asked Corscadden about his time in Mason City. Corscadden smiled and said the words, Jodi Huisentruit, according to the documents. The court agents pressed further, asking Corscadden whether or not he thought Jodi was alive, to which Corscadden replied, quote, "No, she's dead," unquote. However, Thomas Corscadden has never confessed to direct knowledge of or involvement in Jodi Huisentruit's abduction from Mason City on June 27, 1995. When this news was breaking in 2004, Find Jodi co-founders Josh Benson and Gary Peterson produced this segment on Corscadden for KAAL-TV in Austin, Minnesota.
Thomas Gary Corscadden is a 3-time convicted sex offender. According to documents from a court hearing this summer, Corscadden traveled southern Minnesota and north Iowa looking into windows and hiring prostitutes to spend time with him in his van, which was equipped as a poor man's porn palace. Corscadden was classified as a suspect 3 months after Huisentruit's disappearance. Austin police contacted Mason City police, who along with the Minnesota Crime Lab and the FBI executed a search warrant on a light-colored van that had been owned by Corscadden. They found nothing at the time linking him to Huisentruit, but then 5 years later, during a psychological evaluation at Oak Park Heights Prison, Corscadden bragged about having been a suspect in this well-publicized case. When these details reemerged this April in a court hearing, So did police scrutiny.
Well, we had planned on interviewing Mr. Corscadden when a lot of these things came out from the civil commitment.
I had another friend who had a pickup over there.
Randy Seward, an acquaintance of Corscadden, remembers a police search on his farm looking for Jodi.
They went through the bonfire pile thinking that we had burned her body.
A warrant was served on Corscadden while in custody in Austin for the hearing. That was this past August, 9 years after the crime. It would be the first time police ordered a palm print to be taken from Corscadden to compare to one left at the scene.
They were not a match with the ones that were recovered at the crime scene. We did have a talk with Mr. Corscadden. He was very cooperative, calm.
What do we know for certain about Corscadden? We know he had a yellow van, a Ford Econoline. You may recall the light-colored van cited by a witness outside Jodi's apartment the morning she was abducted.
Where I seen it sitting.
We know that the business he worked for brought him to Mason City on many occasions. A former acquaintance remembers going with him.
Pretty uneventful. We just drove down, dropped off cabinets, and drove back. The way he was talking, he went down there just about every other day.
When Huisentruit disappeared, Corscadden was living with a friend in a trailer park in Austin. He spent 6 months there.
He would come around once in a while, and he told me he was living in his van.
Public records documenting Thomas Corscadden's criminal career began at age 18. His first arrest as an adult was in Moore County for burglary and assault with a dangerous weapon. He has a history of window peeping. He also has charges of sex abuse with a minor. That's what landed him in prison in 2000. This April, Corscadden then agreed to take a lie detector test, so law enforcement could explore how much he really knew about the Huisentruit case.
We'd go to St. Peter, and we would use probably the BCA.
6 News First was the first to talk with officers after the test was given.
We did do a polygraph on Mr. Corscadden yesterday. The Minnesota BCA is the one that performed it for us. Corscadden agreed to do it. It was a voluntary thing. It's probably the last step with Mr. Corscadden. We've investigated him about as far as we can, and we're going to be moving on.
Mason City police say they're now back to where they started.
Turn over every rock we can.
Having reportedly passed his polygraph, and with his palm print not matching the one found on Jodi's vehicle parked at the scene of her abduction, the MCPD has since moved on, as you heard Lieutenant Vanderweerd state in that clip. But some others have not. Some believe it's possible Corscadden did have a role in Jodi Huisentruit's case. One of those people is Corscadden's own daughter, Allysha, who joins the FindJodi podcast for an exclusive interview. That is coming up next. Allysha Corscadden is the daughter of Thomas Corscadden. Her father was out of her life by the time she was about 10 years old, and understandably her memories of her father are, as a result, incomplete. But they are there, nonetheless, all these years later.
I remember him being at the home consistently up until I was about maybe 8. I remember the day my parents got divorced. I was in preschool. The bus went to bring me home, and my mom wasn't there, so they brought me back to the preschool, and she came to pick me up. Later on, she told me that she was at court finishing everything with his divorce, so I think I was about 5. But he still lived in the house until I was about 7 or 8. I saw him less and less. I was always told he just had to work, and he was gone more often, but maybe he was actually just moving somewhere else. We got a new house when I was 9, and by that time, he was completely out of our lives and hadn't come back, and we had restraining orders on him and things. From what I do remember him being around when I was little, he was there. He'd play with us sometimes. Never really felt like, he did anything above and beyond or extra or anything. We always preferred to be around our mom when she was home.
As we speak with Allysha for her first-person account, it's important that we limit our focus to just that. What she remembers herself as seeing or hearing. I was aware of this as I spoke with Allysha earlier this month, taking on the role of parsing out and listing the things that she can speak to with first-person authority, things that she remembers seeing herself, hearing herself as a witness. But we need to separate that from third-person accounts that she may have received of her father's alleged actions over the years, and also anything else she may have read or seen on her own. And as a young girl, there are many things Allysha didn't know or didn't have a reason to be curious about. For example, what her father specifically even did for a living was something Allysha was not privy to as a young girl.
Yeah, he was gone for a few days, like very randomly, and like we were little, we'd go play. We didn't really care, I guess, that he was gone. It wasn't in our lives to a point where we'd like miss him, but we'd notice he'd be gone. I remember hearing about Chicago when I was little, Iowa, maybe South Dakota, different parts of Minnesota. I'm not sure if I ever really asked specifically where, but I do remember my mom saying one time, he had to go to Chicago, and I remember him saying that he's had to go to Iowa before.
What vehicles did he own or have access to then?
What I remember the most is it was like a big van, had no windows, like typical creeper van. He had that. It was kind of like a white, off-cream color, rusty, pretty old. There was another car that my mom had. She could only drive for a little bit before her disability made it so it wasn't safe for her to drive. I'm not sure what kind of car it was. It was just like a dark, like a black or dark brown or a very dark red with like the really thin like red stripes along the trim. It's a very boxy car.
Thomas Corscadden's yellow Ford Econoline van is verified through court documents. That vehicle was later destroyed in a fire, which Corscadden claims to know nothing about. That's according to media reports and the Mason City Police Department. Now, a call from Josh Benson and Gary Peterson's reporting that a friend of Corscadden had said that the Mason City Police had visited his property in Minnesota searching for any signs of evidence or destroyed evidence in connection with Jodi's case. Allysha does not have first-hand knowledge about what happened to that yellow van, but she does know that property in question very well. And it was at that property where, even as a young girl, she clearly remembers witnessing Corscadden and others attempting to destroy a different vehicle, a motorcycle, in a bonfire.
I believe it was a 4th of July party. My dad had a friend named Randy that lived on a farm out in Dexter. We went there so much when I was little that if I were going there today, I could probably remember how to get back there. We would go out there a lot, and there was a time for like a 4th of July party. There was a ton of people, a ton of adults. There's a big bonfire. Lots of people were drinking, playing horseshoes. Big farm party, setting off fireworks and whatnot. There was this guy named Max. He was a friend of my dad's, and he rode motorcycle, but he was a little bit younger than my dad, so maybe closer to my mom's age or a little younger. And my mom had like a crush on him. This was after my parents were divorced or when they were like separating a little bit. My mom had like a crush on him, so they would talk. And my dad found out that they were talking. He got like really jealous, so he took Max's motorcycle with a couple of the other guys that were there, and they threw it on top of the bonfire and burned it. That's what I remember about that. I don't know if they burned the van then, because I think he still had the van though. I had always heard from reports that the van was burned. I never saw it burned. I just knew it was gone one day. I don't know if they said it got burned or what, but the only bonfire I remember is like a motorcycle got burned that night.
This motorcycle incident occurred, Allysha recalls, the summer following Jodi's disappearance. And while Allysha doesn't know specifically what happened to that van, she does remember it.
He always left the home by himself. I never heard about him being with like anybody else. I do know there was a couple times he had like other friends over that I saw very rarely. That'd be like work buddies, but I'm a little kid. I want to go outside and play. I don't want to hang out inside. I didn't know what they were talking about. Yeah, I never knew if he like would stay in like a hotel or anything like that when he'd leave, because like the back of the van was set up with like a mattress, and just it as gross as you could think it would be, like that kind of van. And I'm a little kid. I don't think anything of it. It's like, oh, camper van, cool. Nowadays, that's a huge red flag.
The offenses that sent Thomas Corscadden to prison in the first place were against his own daughter, Allysha.
I think they had like my name printed like when I was like 7. Like they had that in the newspaper. I'm like, I thought they couldn't put minors' names in like the paper like that. But I remember it was like this big thing because they had mentioned my name and said that I was his daughter in like the newspaper and on the news. Lots of people in school found out about that. I'm the only one in town with that last name. Small town. Parents found out about it. they didn't want their kids playing with me. They didn't want them coming over to my house. You know, I picked on all the time when I grew up. So, yeah, I ended up switching schools and changing my last name just to kind of hide myself a little bit. But it just so happened that one of the girls that I went to school with used to live across the street from us, and she spilled the whole beans about everything. So it was back to the same stuff at a new school.
Allysha says her mother, Corscadden's ex-wife, believed strongly until she died that he had been involved in other crimes and would specifically mention Jodi's case often.
He's a very manipulative person. I know I think it's damn near impossible to lie during like a polygraph test and cheat it. But it's just like, oh man, did you ask him the right questions? Investigators know what they're doing, so it's just like, you know, me being paranoid about, oh God, what if he did do it and I can't figure it out. He's very manipulative, and yeah, that's totally something he would brag about for no freaking clue. It's not anything to brag about, especially when you're a suspect. Like, that's serious. I don't know if he knew anybody who would have actually been involved. I feel like it's highly likely he was involved with that or knows someone who was.
Allysha shared with me a story about her father to illustrate how she feels he uses people to get what he wants. Allysha says it happened more recently while her father was incarcerated at a lower security psychiatric facility. Allysha had reached out to her father at that time in an effort to find closure as a part of her own therapy for what he had done to her.
He seemed fake whenever he was apologetic about things. And then when I was writing with him 10 years ago, trying to have closure about what all happened with that, it seemed like he was trying to, like, in a polite way, like, gaslight me, but defend himself. I'm changed. I'm a good person. I don't do that kind of thing. I think your mom made it sound worse than it actually was. She made you believe this happened and this didn't happen. You know, and you're young and you didn't know. And I'm like, I have memories of things that happened. So him trying to tell me that it wasn't real or things like that, you know, so like things that he would try to say that was still very manipulative and not very like genuinely apologetic. At that time, he hadn't changed, but we had been writing for maybe like a year. And no, I don't think I ever got like a straight up apology for what he put my family through.
He doesn't sound like he was remorseful at all with you.
I think he wanted to use me as, like, he tried to convince me that he had changed and he had done better and he's been going to therapy and things like that. So he would use me as, like, an outside source to get him access to these kind of things, I suppose. It was a really weird letter he wrote me about he had gotten into a fight with another inmate and he had spit on him or spit at him. And if you spit at somebody, that's like you get charged for that because it's like bodily fluid. Mm. And he was like, you need to send me your blood record to prove that you don't have hepatitis or anything like that because they want to test me for this since I spit at him. And if I had it, then you would have it because you're my daughter. And I'm like, no. Plus, that's you can get it afterwards. I was like, why do you need my, like, medical history records for something you're going to jail for?
Right.
Like, and I stopped talking to him. I didn't even write him like an explanation letter of like why I stopped. He would send me letters to send to other people, like sex pen pals or something, where people like write fantasy letters back and forth to each other. And a lot of those places do not accept letters from inmates. So if you get a letter from a prison, they stamp it. He would send me these letters already sealed up so I could send them because he couldn't mail them from there. I didn't know what they were for. I thought it was like for a friend. So I mailed a couple, and one of them somehow got mailed back to me. So I opened it and I read it, and I was like pretty disgusted because he was saying things about not necessarily like me or my mom, but in like a fictional character way where I recognized it was this situation. So
who was he sending those to? Men, women?
Both, I believe. In the back of like some like porn magazines, they have like pen pal links that you can like write if someone's looking for like a dominatrix or something like that. Or I don't know if he had access to a computer at all to be able to like look for any of that, but I know like those sites are pretty heavily blocked in facilities like that, so I don't know how he got any of these letters, but they would be like all over the country. They're like thick letters too, and he would include like photos that he had clipped out from a magazine being like, oh, this is my wife and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, that's not. Like, you're not married. What the hell are you doing? So that I was pretty I was pretty disgusted by that, like deviant, like sexual, like fantasy role playing thing. Like that's fine if you want to do that in your own home. Like I don't judge whatever, but it's really creepy when you're
to use your daughter for it.
Yeah, to do that, and it's like you're in jail for having these issues, and then you're lying to me, telling me that you've gone therapy for this and you're better about it and everything, and no, you're sending that? I don't think so. So I threw all those letters away. I think I burned a lot of them too because I was so grossed out by them.
You don't think there were people he knew?
No, I don't think so, because he would use like a different name, and he would like write as if he were like an English person, which was like really weird. I was like, what am I reading? He would try to send me letters, but I just threw them away right away. I wouldn't read them. And then I moved, and he never knew I moved.
The day before she disappeared in 1995, Jodi Huisentruit complained to acquaintances that she'd been receiving harassing phone calls. She was abducted the next day. Allysha says her father would do the same to her mother after they moved into their new house, and she believes he did worse.
We were worried for like the first few months when we moved in that he was going to be looking through the windows, trying to get in. And, you know, when you have like a new house and like the house cracks and settles and everything like that, that scared us so much, like the first few months living there, because we thought it was him trying to get in. And we were really scared for a while. There was somebody that was looking through my window, I think that first Easter. There was still snow on the ground, and the neighbors next door have a motion detector light. I remember it was a full moon. I wanted to look outside in the backyard on the fresh snow. Full moon was really pretty. I saw a shadow, like a figure of somebody standing like right next to the window. And I freaked out, and I ran down the hallway, and I told my mom. She called the police right away. And then she called the neighbors to have a motion detector light. That light went off. The police showed up, but whoever it was had ran through the backyard behind us. They followed his footprints in the snow, but they never caught him.
Wow.
So it was completely dark, so I couldn't tell you who it was, but I feel like it could have been him. Like, that was my room.
And that would have been 96.
Sometime around there. March.
Okay.
Allysha says she heard her father threaten to kill people on multiple occasions.
My mom, yeah. People he would yell at on the phone or yell at outside. You know, my mom would tell us to go in her room, and you know, she didn't want us out there, like, seeing that. I have no idea who he was fighting with or why. Like, other guys he'd be yelling at, so.
But he threatened to kill your mom?
They fought a lot, and she had to call police on him many times, and it was very difficult for her to fight back with her brain cancer. She had her brain tumor removed, so she didn't have part of the back of, like, her skull in the back of her head to protect her. And I was always so scared that if my dad hit her there, she would die because, like, you know, it's so delicate there.
Right.
I don't ever remember seeing my mom with, like, a black eye, though. But there were times that she would get knocked to the ground.
Thomas Corscadden was a prolific sexual offender, enough for the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota to keep him from re-entering the public following the time he served for abusing his daughter. He remains at a facility in Minnesota today. But there is no known link between Thomas Corscadden and Jodi Huisentruit, to say nothing of his involvement in her abduction. As for Allysha, she remembers her father certainly knew who Jodi was, and that he would watch her on television often, but that's as far as her adolescent recollection can take us. After that, about Jodi, she's left to speculate along with the rest of us.
To know a routine of when she's on the air, and then to know when she's running late to still hang out in the parking lot. He could have been down there, like, looking for her car while she was at work and matching up, seeing if the car was at the apartment that she believed to be at, he believed her to be at, or, you know.
Right.
I don't feel like killing somebody would have been the motive. I feel like he would be perfectly capable on his own of abducting her and raping her. But an accidental killing, I don't think he would have meant to do that if he did that. But he would have needed help getting rid of the van and everything else after that.
Sure. So he's not a murderer in your eyes. He's not, he's a sexual predator, but not a killer.
He was physically abusive, but I don't think he got into a lot of fights with guys too. So I feel like he felt like he needed to, but I don't think that was like initially like his intention.
So far as is known publicly, the Mason City Police Department moved on from Thomas Corscadden as a suspect in Jodi Huisentruit's case in 2004. The thanks of the entire Find Jodi team go out to Allysha for sharing her very personal story with us for the podcast. She agreed to do so in the event that any information she possessed could help bring closure to Jodi's family. And thank you for listening. By the way, to those who may have been wondering, this episode was delayed as a result from my having been recovering from COVID over the past few weeks, feeling fine now. So we've released this episode as soon as we could, and we are now planning on resuming our normal episode schedule. But thank you all for your patience. As always, anyone with any information in the Jodi Huisentruit case is encouraged to contact the Mason City Police Department or the Iowa DCI. We also accept named and anonymous tips at FindJodi.com. Find Jodi is a not-for-profit run by volunteers, and all donations and proceeds to the group go directly to our mission of keeping Jodi's case alive. For the entire Find Jodi team, I'm Scott Fuller. Thank you for listening.